Hi everyone, and welcome to today's episode of The Daily Grind. In today's episode, I want to talk to you about the denim jacket that I have been working on. This is the Alina Design & Company Hampton denim jean jacket. It's an awesome pattern, but it's also a pattern that took me a lot longer to make because I've been working so much with knits and knit fabrics lately, and those are so easy to work with. But this had a lot more detail on it. You have patch pockets, welt pockets, a lot of top stitching, and so I'm going to show you some of the tips and techniques that I use to make this a successful experience. And if you're new to making anything with heavier fabric like denim or denim jackets, I think some of these tips are going to be very valuable to you. So listen up and I'm going to walk you through it. So the first thing you want to think about is the type of denim you're using. Now if you look at this denim jacket, denim jackets generally have a very thicker and beefier weight of denim, and that's what you want. So you're looking really between like a 10, 11, and 12 ounce denim, and I think this is about 11. In my stash here, I have another denim right here. This is more of an indigo blue, a little bit of stretch in here, maybe about 1% lycra added to this 100% cotton. If not, it might just be a regular cotton woven. It's hard to tell when it's wrapped up and I'm pulling on it. This right here, this is definitely a stretch denim that has, I believe, 2% lycra in it. And this is, it looks like a black or a very dark blue. Black denim is so hard to get, so if you have a chance to get black denim, stock up on it. I know I did. I do have some other black denim somewhere in my stash. I don't know exactly where it is. And this one right here, this is a very thin fabric. It looks like denim, but this is not what you would want for a jacket because there's just too much drape. It doesn't have the structure to really hold the shape well. So be mindful of your denim. You do want to go to 11 to 12 ounce denim, maybe with 1 or 2% lycra. I feel like that little bit of added stretch to it. So the second thing you're going to have to think about is thread. Now some people, when they sew, they tend to think that they need heavy-duty thread for garments. And in my opinion, this is a common mistake because you really don't need heavy-duty thread. I just use regular polyester thread. I like using the Poly Metler. You could use the Coats & Clark Dual Duty. There's different brands of thread. You want to find your favorite. But when I was doing the top stitching on this jacket, I didn't have top stitching thread. Now top stitching thread is a thicker thread. It's not heavy duty thread, but it's a thicker thread that really shows up when you're doing the stitching on that denim jacket. So I didn't have the top stitching thread. I went with 2 threads through the eye of one needle. So when I was doing this, I put the 2 threads at the top. I had it on the regular spool pin, and then I have an external spool stand where I put the other spool of thread, took both those threads, put it through my machine, just as if it were one thread. And then when I got down to the eye of my denim, size 16 needle, if I'm doing top stitching, denim 16, I put those 2 threads through the eye of that needle, and then I set my stitch length to about 4.0. I like either 3.5 or 4.0 if I'm doing top stitching on denim, and then I did the top stitching on this jacket. It really pops if you're using 2 spools of thread in the absence of something like the top stitching thread. And honestly, I would rather have top stitching thread, but I wasn't going to go out and buy it when I'm sitting at home and I'm like, well, I got 2 white spools here, I'll just double up. Now you can really see this right here. If I bring the sleeve over, this is where I made a mistake, but it doesn't really matter because it's on the sleeve, it's on the side, and you really don't see it. If you look at the bar tack right here and you look at the stitching on this side, this stitching was done with 2 strands of thread through the eye of the needle. Over here, I forgot to put one of those threads back through the eye because I was doing something else. And you can see this does not stand out as much. Not a mistake. Hey, we'll call it a design detail. That was really a mistake on my part because I forgot to put that in. Now, if you look over here, like for the buttonholes here, I did use 2 strands of thread through the eye of the needle, but the ones on the front, I only used 1. It's not going to affect the look at all, just looks a little different. I like it the way it looks. I even had to put the buttonholes down here on the sleeves and also the tabs in the back. So for regular sewing of a denim jacket, use regular poly thread. You could use 2 spools of poly thread, threading it as if it were one thread and going through the eye of a denim needle. And so you don't separate those threads, you just put both threads to the eye. And you could do your top stitching at a 3.5 or 4.0 stitch length, or just get some top stitching thread. That would be the easiest of all. If you're using top stitching thread that tends to be a little bit thicker, you may have to reduce your upper tension a smidge. Always do tests on a sample of fabric before you actually do the top stitching that you would like. All right, so let's look at number 3. So the next thing you're going to have to think about is getting creative, because I am the queen of running out of fabric because I never seem to order enough. So on this jacket, I had that same problem. Where I really ran into it was on the waistband of the denim jacket. And if you look on this side, I had enough fabric to use a solid piece of denim. But on the other side, I did not. So I used a batik, a cotton batik, and I interfaced both the cotton batik as well as the waistband to give it a little bit more beef, because if this inside layer was denim, it would definitely be more structured. So 2 layers of interfacing, one on the batik, one on the waistband was where it's at. And it's really holding up nicely and it feels very firm. But if you can see right here on the waistband, let me just angle this down just a little bit. You can see that when I folded this to the inside, what I did to the batik was I made the batik a 1/4 inch narrower than the denim side. So when I folded them to match the edges together before I stitched this on, it actually pulled the denim to the underside, and that is perfect so that that batik does not peek out on the other side, because what if it doesn't go with something that I'm wearing? So I wanted to make sure I hid the batik on the inside. Angle it down just a little bit more. So I really had that issue. Then next up, I had to piece the waistband itself. And I talked about this before because I didn't have enough fabric, but I had scraps. So I tried to make the joins symmetrical. There's a join over right here, and there is a join right here. So I tried to do that all the way around to make it look like a design detail, and it like it was supposed to be that way. So I think I did a pretty good job. Now, if I had longer strips, what I would have done is maybe I would have done vertical seams, but to match up with the seam on the jacket. I could have done it here. I could have done it at the side seam. So however creative you want to get, that's what you're going to do to make it work. I will admit, I did not cut the waistband on grain. I just didn't have enough fabric. I had to futz with it and make it work. But I did make it work. And like I said, I just work with pieces for the waistband, and on the inside I use that cotton batik. On the insides of the pockets, I also used a batik both for the patch and for the welt pockets right here. I like to use lining fabrics that pop with the garment. When you take a little peek inside, ooh, that's a beautiful fabric. If you don't want that, then choose something that matches the garment itself. Any way you want to work it is going to be perfect. So you make that decision. Don't let something hold you up. That will prevent you from completing the jacket itself. A lack of fabric did not hold me up. I made do with what I had, and it turned out great. All right, number 4 is something you want to consider. The collar on this jacket, the sleeve cuffs, and the waistband all had to use interfacing. Now, as a garment sewer, I think garment sewers who have been sewing a long time, we tend to be interfacing snobs. We are, and we like getting interfacing from quality sources. So I'm going to be doing my next podcast on my favorite sources from which to buy interfacing. And I'm going to give you a huge tip on what to do when you buy interfacing to make sure you get the best possible results. Most of the time I do use a fusible interfacing, and I used a fusible in every place where I could on this jacket. Sometimes a sew-in is essential, but for most of what I do, I just use a fusible, but there are some tips that you want to get in my podcast. So be sure to listen to my upcoming podcast to be released this week on interfacing. All right, number 5, and this is all about the machine. You guys, if you have a machine at home that is cheap, and when I say cheap, I'm talking in about the $100 to $150 range that you got from Walmart or Target, that machine is not going to handle this very well. In fact, you could jam the machine up, you could throw it out of time. Most of those machines do not have a metal frame inside, and that's what really is the guts of the machine. And some of you, unfortunately, during the pandemic, I saw a lot of this. Sewing dealers kept their prices relatively the same. Amazon really jacked up some of the prices of those machines. The machines that I saw that were maybe, $150, $160 are now selling for $300, and people bought them, and they're just not a quality machine. So I almost don't even want to give a price point, but during normal times, to really get a machine that's going to handle these heavier denim fabrics well, or heavier coating weight fabrics, you're going to be looking around that $400 range on up. Now, if you go to your local sewing dealer, they often have some really high quality used machines that are serviced and ready to go that would be the same price, like maybe in your $300 to $400 range, but would do a great job handling fabric like this. So what did I use? I have a lot of machines, and I pulled out my bad boy. My bad boy is my Janome 1600P. It has power and speed. And when I first bought it, I put 16 layers of denim under the foot of that machine, and it performed like a champ. Got a beautiful stitch on 16 layers of denim. And I'm talking this weight of denim. This is pant weight denim, 11 to 12 ounce denim. So that's what I used for most of this jacket. I did use my serger in a couple other places, but it really did a great job. The machine matters. And if you have an older machine, maybe that's been sitting in an attic, maybe it was your grandmother's, pull it out. Take it to your sewing dealer. Honestly, the value of the machine will not come close to the value of the service, meaning the service is going to be way more than the value of the machine. But if you really have a tie to that machine, if you're nostalgic and you want to use it because it was your mom's machine or your grandmother's machine, go to your local sewing dealer and see if they can tune it up, because many of those older machines, many, not all, were really designed to stitch through very heavy weights of fabric. So that's also an option. In addition, when you go to your sewing dealer, look at their used machines, because they may have some that will be in that $300 to $400 price range that are really great machines for working with heavier fabrics. And that's one of the questions that I always ask people when they come in the store and they're looking for a machine. And they say, well, I want a machine, and they say, I'm a garment sewer. And I'm like, okay, well, what do you sew? And I ask them, are you planning on sewing coats, jackets, or jeans? Because that tells me that the consumer needs a better quality machine, and I will steer them to one that can handle these heavier fabrics. Number 6, it's about the needles. And you guys, I did a podcast on that. Download the podcast, Sew Chat with Kat. But I will tell you the needles that I use for this. For the seams on the inside, I used a size 14 denim needle. And for the top stitching, I used a size 16 denim needle, because oftentimes in your top stitching, you're going through multiple layers of fabric, not just 2. It might be 3, 4, 5, 6, on upwards of 8. So use the right needle. All right, number 7. This is a real sticking point with me. When I first started sewing, I was about 12, 13 years old, and I did not have a one-step buttonholer on my machine. I was working with, honestly, it was a crap machine. And every time I did a beautiful garment, and I did lots of beautiful garments throughout high school and college, and then I would have to go to the buttonholes, I would hold my breath. I'd almost want to cry, because the buttonholes will make or break the garment. And I would do the buttonholes, and maybe half would turn out great. The other half, I would have to seam rip, do it again. And if I was real unlucky, I'd have to do it 2 or 3 times. Today's buttonholers are insanely good. They are wonderful. And I did not really have much of a problem doing the buttonholes. Now, these I did before it was attached on the garment, as well as the tabs, the sleeves, the cuffs, and the fronts I did after it was assembled. I will tell you this, I did have a problem with my one-step buttonholer balking. So this is where, if you're using a one-step buttonholer, you want to look into something called a stabilization plate. A stabilization plate will hook onto your buttonhole, and you will sandwich your fabric. Pretend this is the top plate, this is the bottom plate. Your fabric will go in between, so it will help your fabric move smoothly over areas in the buttons where maybe you have a seam allowance here and it's a little bit thicker here. Likewise, up here, you have one edge. This is very bulky in here. So the stabilization plate will really help you get great buttonholes. Now, even with that, on my Elna 760, I have one of the models that did not come with a stabilizer plate. So I was able to do 2 buttonholes really good, and then it just conked out in some of the other areas that I was working on. I switched to my Bernina 740, and the stabilizer plate did a much better job. I still had a problem, and what I did was I ordered something called a Bernina compensation plate for the buttonholes, which will help me specifically with uneven areas. So I'll report back to you on if I think that Bernina compensation plate for buttonholes, they have another compensating tool, but this is a little bit different. I'll let you know how well that works. I'm really excited to try that out. But I got through my buttonholes. Again, buttonholes can be challenging. You always want to do a test stitch out. And well, I should clarify this. Buttonholes are easy, but when you're doing something like this where you might be butting up against something that's thicker, or you're doing it on an edge and you have denim where it's really thick right here, you do want to make sure that you do those test stitch outs and try to simulate how that edge is going to be on a sample piece of fabric, because that's going to help you get much better sewing of your buttonholes. Last but not least, this is, I'm looking down for my notes, number 8. And the last part are the buttons. Now, of course, about 3 months ago, I ordered denim buttons, and I ordered 3 different colors because I thought they would take me through all my garments. And when I got my order, one of them was back ordered, and I didn't really pay any attention to which one was back ordered. And it turned out to be my silver buttons were back ordered, and that's exactly what I want to use on this jacket. So I did have the other colors that were going to be the correct size, so that's how I was able to do the buttonholes. But I'm waiting for those denim jeans buttons. Denim jeans buttons are not the kind where you can just walk into your local sewing dealer, or I don't even know if they have them in Joann's. I order mine special, and when those denim jeans buttons come in, I'm going to talk about the source where I ordered them from, and also I'm going to show you how to install these jeans buttons on this jacket and what tool that I use, because it's so cool. You know how I work in 10-year increments? I've said that before. Well, I've been wanting this certain device, maybe not for 10 years, but at least for the past 5 or 6 years. And I finally went out and bought it. I think it was last October, and I got a whole bunch of snaps, and then I got the dies, and I got different types of buttons. And so I'm really excited to use that new device on my jacket to install the denim buttons. And you're going to see just how easy it is, because it just gives it ultimately a very beautiful and finished, ready-to-wear look on the garment. All right, you guys, so what am I going to do in between? Well, that will be my next daily grind, because my buttons are going to take about 2 or 3 weeks to arrive. All right, you guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode of The Daily Grind.